All right, Jeremy Herb is a CNN politics reporter. Areva Martin is a CNN legal analyst and civil rights attorney. And Kendall Coffee is a former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida. Good to see all of you.
Hi, Fred. All
right, so Jeremy, you first. How damaging could a possible Cohen indictment be for the president?
We learned last week that the Justice Department has been investigating Michael Cohen, but we didn't learn what they are specifically doing. And I think the subject matter really here could determine whether or not this would implicate the president. CNN reported that some of the materials that were taken related to Stormy Daniels, something that could, involve the president. At the same time, there also was financial information taken about his dealings with taxi medallions and taxi owners, something that would be less relevant. So I think, the key question will be the subject matter and also what's affected by attorney-client privilege. Trump and Cohen's lawyers both are in court right now fighting about whether some of the documents that were seized can actually be used by prosecutors.
And then, Areva, one would think that this huge effort, the raid of Michael Cohen's, places, his home, his hotel, etc., wouldn't be just about Michael Cohen. Why all this effort if it's not in some way related to the president?
And that's what's troubling and somewhat puzzling as well, Fred. Why is the president going to such lengths to prevent information from being revealed? If he has nothing to hide, if he's not been involved in any criminal activity, why does he care about Michael Cohen, perhaps even, cooperating with federal prosecutors? When you look at what the president is doing in the civil lawsuit that's pending in federal court and what he's doing with respect to this raid, it suggests that he has some guiltiness, some conscience of guilt. And I think we need to know more about what was taken from Cohen's office, but it appears as if the president is really trying to prevent the American public from knowing very much about what Michael Cohen was involved in and the extent of their relationship.
And then, Kendall, there's this legal, battle. And then, of course, there's been so much written. Just today's New York Times, writes about the relationship of, President Trump and people who have worked in the Trump organization, how it's a one-way street of loyalty. And it lays the groundwork as to why Michael Cohen, even though he said he'll take a bullet for, why potentially, he may not, if it means, going to trial in terms of saving the president. And then the president unleashes a number of tweets, pointing at one of the reporters of that story, Maggie Haberman, and then Maggie Haberman actually responded in this manner. Listen.
Michael Cohen has over the years done all kinds of things, at the president's urging, because the president wanted them to, because he came to sort of intuit what he thought the president would want. It didn't always work out. Sometimes those things were handled in a way that was either ham-fisted or that they came back to bite the president later. The Stormy Daniels case would be one of them. But Cohen was basically trying to do right by his boss and was seeking his boss's approval. And Trump, time after time, treated him, Trump is very fond of using the phrase like a dog. He treated Cohen quite poorly over a period of time.
So then, Kendall, that, is painting the picture of this personal relationship, but still at question is, what was the professional kind of relationship? Was he, Michael Cohen, representation of Donald Trump in a legal sense, or was it someone who would conveniently look over documentation? How important is solidifying that relationship to the case going forward, Kendall?
Well, it's very, very important. And Cohen has said he'd take a bullet for President Trump. He hasn't said he'd take a Tomahawk missile. And we don't know the gravity of potential charges that he faces. But it's one thing if it's a year and change. It's another thing if it's between 5 and 10. And it appears that the president has sent maybe two messages. One very explicit, that Cohen's a good guy, and no, he would never flip and turn on the president of the United States, his longtime friend. The other one is maybe implicit, because we recall that President Trump pardoned Scooter Libby, who happened to be an ultimate loyalist. Is perhaps that a signal that if you're an ultimate loyalist, at the end of the day, the president will be ultimately loyal to you? And by the way, there's a pardon power out here.
And well, that's another, option, but only if it's on a federal level, right? Because if it remains on a state level, the president doesn't really have that kind of pardoning power, right, Kendall?
Can't pardon state crimes, although it's complicated. It's not sure yet what the state crimes might be, but that remains in exposure. But it's an intriguing timing, isn't it, that President Trump pardoned Scooter Libby just days after the offices of Michael Cohen were raided by the FBI.
Right, without any kind of relationship between a Scooter Libby and, a Donald Trump. So Ariva, this, a former attorney for, Stormy Daniels is said to be cooperating with prosecutors in this federal investigation, or the investigation of Michael Cohen. Could this be a clue that prosecutors might be going after the whole campaign finance violations because of that $130,000, payment? Unclear whether that's going to be considered a donation, a campaign, donation, or what?
Yeah, it's pretty clear, Fred, that the feds that raided Michael Cohen's office and his home are interested in that negotiated $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels. Now you have Keith Davidson cooperating with the federal investigators, and we know he was involved in negotiating that agreement. And we should also note something pretty significant happened in court this week, and that's in the federal civil case where Michael Cohen was asking that judge to delay that civil case that he removed from state court to federal court. He asked for a 90-day delay, and the court pointed out that there were gaping holes in the paperwork and the documents that were filed by Michael Cohen's team, and the court refused to grant the 90-day delay, saying, Michael Cohen, you come back in and you file your own affidavit stating that you're taking the Fifth Amendment because of the raid that has happened with respect to your home and your office. So that was a pretty significant blow to Michael Cohen, who had hoped that he would get this federal judge who's overseeing this civil case to delay that matter. Now, Stormy Daniels' lawyer is saying, Judge, no delay is needed. Give us the right to go in and take Michael Cohen's deposition, get his testimony under oath. So if the judge sides with Stormy Daniels' attorneys, we could see Michael Cohen being subjected to deposition, even though this raid is pending in the Southern District.
And then back to that whole issue of the pardoning, Kendall, you brought up the Scooter Libby, pardoning and the mysteries behind that. And now apparently the president has just tweeted about pardoning Jack Johnson, and he writes that Sylvester Stallone called me with the story of heavyweight boxing champion Jack Johnson. His trials and tribulations were great, his life complex and controversial. Others have looked at this over the years. Most, though, thought it would be done. But yes, I am considering a full pardon. So, Jeremy, before I hear from you, Kendall, you want to continue your thought on the whole notion of the pardoning powers exercised by the president in mysterious ways?
Yeah, he's putting his pardoning power in the news. And by the way, there are a lot of potential cooperating witnesses out there that might be reading that news very, very closely.
Jeremy?
It's interesting. This is such a far removed way of determining pardons. I mean, the pardons that the president has done so far, Scooter Libby and others, the Justice Department hasn't been involved. And obviously in this case, the president said he got a call and tweeted about it. We'll see now that he's only considering it if it is something the Justice Department looks at. I do remember, John, this is something I think John McCain and Harry Reid, forgive me if I'm wrong, but this is something they have actually been pushing for a few years now, back when Harry Reid was in the Senate. So I'm going to be really curious to see how that plays out.
Ariva, you got a quick thought on that?
Yeah, I just think the president hopefully will stop using the power of the tweet to send these messages to these potential witnesses, because that's not how the justice system should work. Witnesses should not be getting, these smoke signals from the president via tweets.
From someone who says he doesn't like telegraphing, he sure does like telegraphing. Yes. All right. Kendall Coffee, Jeremy Herb, Ariva Martin, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks,